everybody, my name is Tanya and welcome to a wrap-up of BK03, or the third Book Riot Quarterly Box. So I've spoken about the Book Riot Quarterly Box on my channel before in passing, but I'll leave links to all of the information about it down in the description. But the third box that was sent out earlier in the year was the first box that I was subscribed to, and so I thought I'd do a wrap-up of what I thought of the books that came in it. So I had promised myself that if I subscribed to the Book Riot Quarterly Box that I would read the books in it before the next box came. And that hasn't gone so well so far. I finally read the books from the first box. I finished those, the last of them, in October, but I haven't started the books in the next box yet, and I think they'll be shipping in early December. So the theme of the third Book Riot Quarterly Box was Shuffle Your Reading Deck, and so they sent books from 3 different genres that are the 3 most often mentioned by Book Riot readers when asked what books they're most hesitant to pick up. And so the 3 genres that they were sent were romance, were sci-fi and fantasy, and were young adult. Now, of those 3, 2 weren't so much of an issue, but one of them I was interested to see how I would go with it. Romance is a genre that I don't really read and don't have all that much interest in reading. It's not something that I've ever picked up before, so this was going to be really interesting to see how that went. The next category is sci-fi and fantasy, and that's a big yes from me. I love sci-fi, I love fantasy, I'll take any of that, that's great. So I didn't have any trouble with thinking that I would be okay with that one. And the third category is YA. Now, YA is something I do enjoy, but I don't enjoy exclusively. And so I go through stages more than anything. Stages where I feel like reading YA and I might binge on that for a little while, and then I kind of get YA'd out and am not interested in picking anything up again. So that one I wasn't so worried about either. So the first book that I picked up from this quarterly box actually turned out to be the one that I thought would take the longest for me to get to, and that was the romance novel. This is A Rogue by Any Other Name by Sarah MacLean, and it is the first book in the Rule of Scoundrels series. This I picked up during the Booktubeathon, so during some of my first videos during the Booktubeathon, because of the category to read a book in the genre you've read the least that year. And I'm like, well, I don't read romance at all. What perfect impetus to pick this up, because I'd set myself the challenge that, well, you've got to read everything that comes in them if you're going to subscribe to this. But I knew this was the one that I'd probably drag my heels about, so to get the impetus to pick it up was great. So this book follows the story of Bourne, a titled gentleman who ruins everything, loses everything. I think it was a game of blackjack, but gambling anyway. Loses his estate, loses all his respect and everything in one fell swoop at the age of 21. And he's cast from society and everything is destroyed. Skip to 10 years later, he's now the partner in one of London's most exclusive gambling hells, but he's still not respected in society, and while he's built up his wealth, he doesn't have his estate anymore, and the estate that his family line has held for many, many, many generations. And as the story opens, he finds the opportunity to try and gain that back by marrying the perfect and very proper Lady Penelope Marbury, which is our lovely damsel on the front of the cover here. So Penelope has had a broken engagement in the past and is now getting older for, to be considered of marriageable age, and is feeling a bit bored with life. And then Bourne sweeps in and shakes everything up. I actually found that I enjoyed this a lot more than I was expecting to. As I said before, there was a lot of snickering, a lot of eye rolling going on at some of the dialogue and what happens, and I had a good giggle to myself about the goings on in this book. I still don't think that I'm in any great hurry to rush out and read other romance novels. However, the way that this ends does make me slightly intrigued for what happens in the second book in the series, and what's going to happen. The way it's setting up the characters it seems to focus on is a bit intriguing. So while I don't think I'm going to rush out and grab a whole bunch of romance novels out of reading this, if I do ever decide to pick up a different romance novel, it'll probably be the next book in this series. But I wouldn't expect that to happen anytime soon. Now, I don't know what is considered normal in a romance book, because I haven't read a lot of them, but there wasn't a lot of sexy times going on in here, and I don't know whether to be relieved or disappointed about that. Relieved, because I don't think I really need to read a lot of badly described sex scenes, but disappointed at the same time in that if I'm going to read a romance novel, you may as well get a trashy one. So that was the first book that I read from the box. The second book that I picked up was the YA pick, Please Ignore Vera Dietz. This is the first book that I've read by A.S. King, although she has been very popular on BookTube lately. This is the story of Vera, a teenage girl whose best friend has recently died in dark circumstances, male best friend who she was secretly in love with, but something happened between them. He's betrayed her in some way, and so while she knows a little bit more than the police do about the dark circumstances in which he died, she's not coming forward to tell the story and to clear his name. So that was quite an intriguing premise to start with, and we spend most of the novel not knowing what has happened either between them or how he's died, and so it was interesting getting the kind of flashbacks to bring us up to seeing what's happening. This is told from kind of multiple time periods, so we've got Vera as things are happening currently, and then also history flashbacks to their friendship as children and working up to the point where he dies. It's also told from multiple perspectives, so we've got it from Vera herself, then there's also her father. Vera lives in a single parent household with her father. Her mother's gone and doesn't have really any contact with them, so there's some issues relating to that. We also get some sections that are narrated by the dead boy himself, but not in a past sense. It's him knowing that he's dead and looking back on things and reacting to what Vera's doing now. And so that was very interesting too, because that's not, I think, a usual kind of perspective. But that's not the most unusual perspective in this book. There is a pagoda that sits overlooking the town. It's kind of this town monument that's either revered or reviled. And we actually get sections that are narrated by the pagoda. So Vera and Charlie spend a fair bit of time up near the pagoda, and so we've got the pagoda reacting to them and to other things that go on around it. And that was definitely unique too. I quite enjoyed the way it's told in the flashbacks and the multiple perspectives, and to hear things from the dead boy and to hear things from the pagoda. I found that really interesting, and they kind of tell a story that Vera isn't able to tell herself. However, there were other areas that I thought probably didn't quite live up to the potential that they could have had. So A.S. King seems to be talking about kind of deeper issues in this than a lot of YA, but I don't think it was taken quite as far as it could have been. Now that might be because it is YA, and if it wasn't YA then possibly it would have been taken a little bit further, and I understand that, but it kind of felt like it stopped short of where it could have got to in terms of things that I don't want to talk about any spoilery things, but I just thought it could have been taken to another level in some of the things, and when they're revealed it's like, not is that all, but that could have been more. I also had a bit of a hard time understanding some of the characters and their motivations and kind of getting inside their heads. I didn't really understand where they were coming from at all. Now, I read this after going through one of my YA kind of binges. Earlier in the year I read quite a few things that are quite popular on BookTube that have been talked about a lot, and I went through this thing of I'm going to read some of this stuff, and you know, that was what I was craving on reading at the time, and this came after I'd kind of weighed myself out. So I think too maybe that affected my reading in some way. So it is something that I'd like to revisit at some other time and maybe try some more A.S. King when I get to the point that I'm then feeling like reading YA again. And so that means the one that it took me the longest to get to from the Book Riot Quarterly Box was The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin, which is the fantasy pick, and the one that on paper should have been the one that I was most eager to get to. And you saw this in quite a few TBRs and wrap-ups and going, nope, I didn't get to it, nope, I didn't get to it, but I finally finished it in October. As I said in my wrap-up for October, this is set in quite a complex magical world, and it's not actually explained in the book. We just start using these terms and dealing with this culture that we've not had any prep for, and I found that quite difficult to try and get into. Again, as I said in the October wrap-up, it wasn't until I was over halfway through that I discovered there's actually a glossary in the back of the book. It's not indicated anywhere in the book to say that it's there, but there's a glossary in the back of the book explaining all of these terms and giving you a much better picture of what the structure of this world actually is, and the rules that it's governed by. And that would have helped so much more to have earlier when I was trying to get myself worked out. By the time I read the glossary, I could tell you pretty much the definitions of the words. I was pretty well I got the impression of what everything was happening by then, but it would have been so much easier, and I think I would have got more enjoyment out of the book if I had have been able to consult that glossary earlier on. So that's my big tip. If you take anything from this video, is if you read The Killing Moon, make sure you consult the glossary that should be hiding at the end of your book. So I don't know why they didn't indicate at the start with a contents page or something that there is a glossary in this, because I think it's incredibly important, and it definitely takes something from the book not knowing what's going on. So this is a fantasy series that's set in a version of ancient Egypt, which is a departure from the usual fantasy setting of a version of kind of medieval Europe. And I personally enjoy medieval Europe as a kind of influence for those kind of books, but it was nice to have a change. So I spent most of the time reading this not actually knowing who the bad guys are and who I was meant to be rooting for and who were the good guys and who were the bad guys. In the end, I kind of just put it aside and went, I'm going to read it and find out eventually, I guess. Is there a bad guy and is there a good guy? I'm not quite sure. Because the main characters, I wasn't sure whether I was exactly comfortable with. So one of my main characters is Iru, who is a gatherer, which is, in the Book Riot paperwork, they're described as ninja priests, which sounds pretty awesome. But taking from the back cover, the gatherers, their duty is to harvest the magic of the sleeping mind and use it to heal, soothe, and kill those judged corrupt. And that's where it got a little bit... So Iru is one of these killing types of gatherers, and I still don't know how that sits with me. So there are some people who are old or suffering who welcome the fact that they are gathered and are sent off into this other place where the spirits live on forever, and that's great. But there are other people, the ones, you know, who have been judged corrupt, that are being taken against their will. And that got a bit uncomfortable, that thought of this is this kind of almost religious order of ninja priests, and the people that are being judged to be corrupt are effectively killed by them, you know, kind of harvesting this dream blood. And I really don't know how I feel about that. Now, the other side to this is that as a gatherer, once they've kind of tasted this dream blood that they gather from the people that they're, you know, sending to the other side, it then becomes kind of an addiction, in that once they've tasted that, if they're not doing regular gatherings after that, they're weakened and it can send them mad. And so when they're this kind of force that is making these judgments on who's deemed corrupt and who's not, but the fact that they're craving this dream blood doesn't really set up a good situation for a fair judgment. So I did enjoy this, but after struggling through to work out what on earth was going on to start with, and then when I was starting to gain an understanding of what these gatherers were doing, feeling quite conflicted about whether they should be doing that, that did impact on my enjoyment as such of the book. I seem to be doing a lot of air quotes today. So while I enjoyed this, I don't think I'll be in any great hurry to continue on with the series. So in a stunning turn of events, the book that I actually enjoyed, I think most on a pure enjoyment level, was probably the romance pick, wrote by any other name, because I could laugh at it and just roll my eyes and enjoy it. So I think that probably turned out to be the one for pure enjoyment factor I liked the most out of this box. Who would have predicted that? I'm not quite sure that's something I want to admit to. So I gave all of these a 3-star rating on Goodreads. I did enjoy them all, and I'm looking forward to getting started on the items from the next Book Riot Quarterly Box. Just probably not before the one after that comes. But one day, hopefully, I can tell you that I am on track and I am reading what I get in the boxes before the next one comes. So that was my wrap up of the third Book Riot Quarterly Box and the 3 books that I received in there. If you have any questions about any of these, please let me know down in the comments, or if you've read them and have any thoughts and agree or disagree with any of my thoughts about these ones, I would be very interested to hear. And as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!